Jedi Master Luke Skywalker holds a special place amongst the Jedi of the modern era. As one of the most powerful Jedi of his generation, Luke is widely regarded as the pinnacle of what it means to be a Jedi Master. But despite his mastery of the Jedi arts, his training regimen was drastically different from that of his predecessors. The Jedi of the Republic were inducted into the Order and formally trained from a very young age into knighthood, receiving class-wide attention from some of the wisest masters that taught a previously proven step-by-step curriculum. Luke, however, was trained under the shadow of the Empire in a class of his own, receiving very little formal training in the process. Instead, Luke received limited, yet highly individualized instruction from Obi-Wan Kenobi and Master Yoda for a brief period of time, before largely exploring his own path with only the occasional guidance of the aforementioned Jedi Masters via their Force ghosts. Luke is widely self-taught, exploring the fabric of the Force on his own accord and exploring and following his own journey that was drastically different from the Jedi Masters of old. But what ramifications did this have on his development as a Jedi? Not only did this drastically impact his philosophies, but it is also possible that due to this, he actually shares a powerful physical bond with the Jedi who trained Master Kenobi himself, Master Qui-Gon Jinn. Well, stick with us today, Acolytes of the Galaxy, and let's explore the theory that Luke Skywalker's green lightsaber is actually powered by the very same kyber crystal once used by Master Qui-Gon. Luke's lack of formal training under an official academy meant that he, along with his masters, had to improvise parts of his training in accordance with the current circumstances. This included presenting Luke with his father's blue-bladed lightsaber to initiate his training. But while crafting an individual lightsaber was integral in the original teachings, Obi-Wan died at the hands of Darth Vader before this part of the training was ever covered. Perhaps the single most important part of crafting a lightsaber is the kyber crystal, and in Season 5 of Star Wars The Clone Wars, we get an intimate look at this process. We watched as Ahsoka Tano escorts a class of younglings to the kyber-rich planet of Ilum, and we bear witness to their individual trials as burgeoning Jedi Knights, building their bonds with their crystals as well as with one another. Luke, however, never had this opportunity, and it's highly unlikely that he would have had a very difficult time fighting a kyber-rich world that wasn't controlled under the Empire's jurisdiction. We know from Rogue One that the Empire was avidly hunting for kyber in order to complete the construction of the Death Star, meaning the Ilum would have been under Imperial rule almost immediately, and any major kyber mines would be inaccessible to Luke. Not to mention the Ilum was eventually completely mined and turned into Starkiller Base. Yet despite this, Luke would have needed to get his crystal from somewhere, and his search for answers in crafting a new lightsaber after the loss of his father's weapon may have led him to Obi-Wan's hut. In Return of the Jedi, Luke regards Yoda as an old friend, and it's implied that he has little contact with the Jedi Master in the years between the two films. And even if he had been in touch with Yoda, it's unlikely that Dagobah would have accessible kyber deposits. Going back several decades, we also know that Obi-Wan salvaged Qui-Gon's saber after his master's death, and that he used the saber for some time until the construction of his second blue-bladed lightsaber, and even gifted the saber to Anakin during his early training days before the young Skywalker eventually crafted his own lightsaber. Given the sentimentality of the weapon, it's not unreasonable to believe that Obi-Wan held on to his late master's lightsaber, and may have actually had it within his hut, just waiting to be found by Luke on his search for answers regarding lightsaber creation. This does leave us to wonder why Luke would not simply use Qui-Gon's lightsaber if he found the weapon to be intact, but there are a few simple answers to this lingering question. The first explanation is that the saber was no longer functional, seeing as it has seen almost 3 decades of survival and has seemingly not been activated. The latter of the two which were spent on the brutal desert sands of Tatooine, and any number of threats could have damaged the saber beyond use at any point during or before Obi-Wan's exile. The other answer is that the lightsaber craftsmanship is an integral part of the Jedi arts, and is a skill that any Jedi should be proficient in. This could encourage Luke to build his own saber as a test of integrity, knowing that this is something that he will have to learn sooner rather than later. Building his own saber would help him grow as a Jedi, yet given the lack of functioning kyber crystals, he may have disassembled Qui-Gon's blade in order to study the inner workings of lightsaber mechanics, and adopting the crystal as his own. Given the fact that Obi-Wan was present in Luke's life as a Force ghost, he may have given Luke his blessing to use the crystal of his master, who had begun this journey for both of them. It's also interesting to note that Luke's saber is green, and while this makes sense on the surface given the evolution of his character, there are a few interesting details to consider more closely. First off, green is one of 2 primary colorations of a Jedi's blade from the era of the Republic, and represents a Jedi Consular. Jedi Consulars, however, were driven down a binary path from early on in the learning process, with each youngling being steered toward the path of either a Guardian or a Consular, blue or green with little exception. Luke's class, however, was ripe with saber types of all colors and styles, which was directly indicative of his teaching style as well. Seeing as Luke had a more open world view of the Force and the galaxy as a whole, his knights were able to form more personalized bonds with their respective crystals, and were not inhibited by the dogma of the previous order. Therefore, they were able to manifest a wide array of different saber colors, from purple to cayenne to yellow and even gold blades. This leaves us to wonder why a student under such different circumstances would still fall in line with the same Jedi dogma as his predecessors, especially given his depth of life experience and drastically different training philosophy. Luke simply does not fall in line with the training process of the previous generation of Jedi, and this leaves us to wonder if Luke would have manifested a unique lightsaber crystal other than green or blue. Seeing as he still developed one of two primary colorations with no discernible variation, it may hint that this crystal is not in fact Luke's and is a relic of an older age. This theory would also be symbolically satisfying, as Qui-Gon Jinn's significance would continue to live on throughout the Skywalker saga. Qui-Gon Jinn quite famously was the Jedi who saved Anakin from slavery and had more faith in his potential to grow into a Jedi than perhaps anybody else. Qui-Gon advocated for the boy's teachings and wanted to take on the role of the young Skywalker's master before his demise on Naboo, and learning that his crystal was present when Luke was able to finally redeem the lost Skywalker would be a great satisfaction for avid fans of the character of Qui-Gon. It's also interesting that his philosophies fell closely in line with Luke's, seeking to understand the Force in its entirety and separate himself from the dogma of the Republic's order. Seeing as Luke and Qui-Gon were more alike than many might see on the surface, this connection would only help to deepen their bond and solidify their presence as two of the most influential Jedi of Anakin Skywalker's life, one from the very beginning and one from the end. But anyway, my friends, what do you think of this theory? Do you think that Luke used Qui-Gon's kyber crystal in his green saber? And if not, where do you think Luke got the crystal necessary to craft his own lightsaber? As always, my friends, thank you guys so much for the continued support on the channel. It truly means the world to me. May the Force be with you,